So now we are going to learn about friend function. Now, what is a friend function and how it is being used, we'll cover in this topic. So there will be cases where a non-member function has to access private or protected data of a class. This can be done using a friend function. If a function is defined as a friend function, then the private and protected data of a class can be accessed through the function. So normally, what are friends for? Friends normally try to be there as a help for each one of us. So here also a same analogy can be considered. You have some classes and you want to have some new functions to be added which needs to be given access to the private as well as protected data of a class. It can be done using a function if it is declared as a friend. Now we have already looked into access specifiers like public, private and protected, and we have seen how it is being restricted. If you remember, we had shown you a graph where all the restrictions for each of the modes were shown on basis of hierarchy or inheritance. Now here friend functions shall help us solve this particular program. A compiler knows a given function is a friend function by the use of a keyword called friend. A friend function does not lie in the scope of the class in which it is declared as a friend. It cannot be called using the object of that class. I repeat this point, it cannot be called using the object of that class. It can be invoked like any other normal function without an object, and it cannot use member names directly. It can be declared in public or private part without affecting its meaning, and usually the objects or the function has arguments. So it has objects as arguments. Now we'll look into this particular program where you can see the live implementation of a friend function. So if you look over here, you have this particular program where you have a class called distance. It has got a variable called meter, which is declared as private, and you have a function called set underscore distance, which receives an argument a, and that argument will be stored in the variable called meter. So this distance class already has a variable called meter, and the argument passed will be stored in this meter. And you have a function called add 5. Now if you look over here, this function is a friend function. How do you identify a friend function? With the keyword called friend. Now it has a return type int, and it is called add 5. The function name is add 5, and it receives an argument. I hope that point is clear. Now in this class called distance, you are just declaring the function. So the definition happens outside the class, and you can see that your int add 5 is declared. Now usually we have seen that if you are declaring a function outside the class, we usually use a format where you have the return type, class name, scope, resolution operator, and function name. So here you can see that it is not needed because it is a friend function. So you can straight away see that it is declared with the return type, and add 5, you are receiving an argument called distance d, which basically refers to the fact that it is receiving an argument in the form of object. Now you are passing an argument value d, and what happens in this particular program? Now if you look over here, this function, it receives an object as an argument. What does it mean? It is able to receive object and argument as an argument. So if you look over here, you can see that what happens over here is this object is basically used to access this variable called meter, and as you can see that it will be incremented by a factor 5, and you can see that it returns this variable meter which belongs to object d. So I repeat the point that was iterated over here. So here you have a friend function which is not called using the object. It is invoked like a normal function without any object, so no object is calling it, and you can see that it can be declared as private or public without affecting its meaning, and it has objects as its argument. So I repeat the point over here, you are receiving this object d as an argument of this function. Now this object belongs to which class? Distance, and the distance is a class mentioned over here. And what does it do actually? It increments the value of this meter variable occupied by this object D to another incremented to another value of +5. So and in the end it will return this value D dot meter, and hence the return type int. Coming to the main function, you can see that you are creating an object capital D over here, and this capital D is given access to a function called setDistance phi. Now what is setDistance supposed to do? It is supposed to receive an argument of integer data type which is available over here phi, and it will be stored in the variable meter. So the object D's variable meter will be storing a value 5. And what happens over here in the next statement, you can see that cout distance, you're displaying the value of distance, but prior to that you'll be displaying a text over here, distance colon add 5d. Now you can see that what is this is basically a function. I hope it is getting clear. It is not a normal function, it is a friend function, and this friend function does not need an object to call it, and rather this object D is passed as an argument. So what do you expect to happen? This object D is passed as the argument, so it comes over here, and what will happen? This object D's meter variable, whatever value it is storing, it will now be incremented by another additional 5. So what would it become? It should become 10. Let us see what would happen when we run this particular program. It's already there. So I'm running this program, and you can see that it has incremented the value and displayed it as 10. So I repeat once again the concept of this friend class. You have a class called distance. Now you have a private variable over here which is called meter, and you have another function called set distance, which is again a function within the class, and it receives an argument a, an integer argument. It will be stored in the variable meter, and you're declaring a function called friend function, and here it is called add5, which will receive an object as an argument. It has got a return type int, and now you can see that the function gets declared only inside the main class called distance. Now it's defined outside the class, and to define outside the class you don't have to use the usual statement of a return type, class name, scope resolution operator, functioning. You don't have to use that. Since it is declared as a friend function, you need to go directly into it, the return type, function name, and the argument. So here you can see that the argument is not any variable, but rather it is a object belonging to the class distance. The object right now is small d. That is a general format for an argument being passed, and it basically states that the argument is an object. Now whatever argument is being passed, or whatever object is passed, it will have a variable called meter, and it will be incremented by another value +5. Now in the end you'll be returning this meter variable as a part of this particular program. Now you can see the main function over here. This object is D, which belongs to the class distance. That object is calling the function setDistance. So setDistance will be storing the value of meter as the value 5 as designed in the program. And in the end you have a cout statement which would be displaying this distance colon text, and then it is calling this function. Again, if you look over here, when you usually call a function, you used to call it object dot function name, but here since it is a friend function, you don't have to use a object to call it, but rather you can see that this object is passed as an argument, and which means when it comes to this function, this object D's meter will be accessed, and it will be incremented by 5, and hence you get the value as 10. I hope this program is clear of the friend function and its properties. Your syllabus also contains another one topic, that is overloading binary operators using friend functions. So basically we are going to look into a friend function being used into a case of binary operator overloading. So now if you remember, basically if you remember this concept of binary operator overloading, you would remember the fact that you had done a program like this. This was explained in the class. You have a class called complex, and then you have the constructor and the default and the parameterized constructors. You had the function being called over here, the operator overloading function over here. Then you have the display function. Now this was declared inside the class, and now it is defined outside the class, where you had this operation being performed. And I hope you remember this program. This should be available with you, and you would have basically remembering the fact that we generated a complex number addition program where you got the final complex number C3, which is equal to C1 plus C2. Over there, if you remember, in this operator overloading function, we had explained the concept of a new object being created called temp, and then the C is X is basically referring to the one calling the function, that is C1's X, and this C is the one that is passed by the as argument, which is typically C2's X, and then you'll be adding to get temp.x and temp.y, and it will be returned. So 2.5 plus 1.6, 4.1 was the answer, and here you had 8.3 as the answer. So I hope you remember that particular program. Now this same program, we are going to do it with the help of a friend function. Not exactly in the form of a complex number, but what we are going to do is to find out what would be the end result. So if you look over here, you have a class called demo, which again has got a variable x and y. You have the constructors, the default and the parameterized constructor over here, and you have a friend function within this class, which will be operating, or your operator overloading this plus symbol, and you're passing d1 as well as d2 as the arguments. So you're creating a temporary object d3. d3.x will be d1.x plus d2.x. In comparison to the previous program, both the complex numbers are passed as arguments. There is no object calling the operator overloading. It is basically the objects, the complex values are passed as arguments. So d3.x will be d1.x plus d2.x, and d3.y will be equal to d1.y plus d2.y, and you'll be returning this thing. The display function exists as such, and you can see that in the main function you're having demo d1, which passes 2, 3, and you have demo d2, which passes 4 and 5, and you are creating an object d3 which will run these default constructors, and you are calling this operator overloading function d3 equal to operator plus d1 d2 as specified over here. And then you'll be displaying object c1, object c2, and object c3. You'll be calling the display function, which will be displaying x and y values. If you run this program, it's already run and kept ready. So we are running it once again, and you can see that it is displaying the output. Object C1's x is 2 and y is 3. Object C2's x is 4 and y is 5. Object C3's x will be 2 plus 4, 6, and y will be 3 plus 5, 8. So that would give you the addition performance of two complex numbers using friend function. Now, the previous program was a normal operator overloading program, and this program being explained to you right now is an operator overloading program using friend functions. You can access these programs and study it, and I hope this concept of friend functions are also clear.